I'm going to be doing a quick grid drawing tutorial. I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but this is just a little refresher in case you forgot. Maybe you haven't worked on it in a while. This will give you a few drawing tips and hopefully help you improve your drawing skills. So let's get started with the tutorial. Alright, so I'm going to start with my picture. My picture I found in a magazine. I'm going to first start by making a 1-inch grid on top of this with my ruler. That will give me some squares over the whole thing. Again, the whole point of this grid drawing is to be able to focus on one tiny area as opposed to looking at the entire thing and trying to copy exactly what you're seeing. So this grid method really allows you to look at each individual square and go one by one to create the overall image. So on my picture here, I'm going to be making a 1-inch grid with my ruler. So if I look at this, overall, it's about 5 inches already, and it looks like that 5 inches is really close to the edge, so I'm just actually going to make it easier for myself, just going to make this whole thing actually just 5 inches. And I'm going to measure along the bottom as well, 5 inches, and then I'm going to connect those lines. Probably kind of hard for you to see, but you can kind of see it. So I'm going to have 5 inches across, so what I'm going to do is line that back up again and just make a notch everywhere where there's an inch on my ruler. So I'm just going to draw a small line everywhere there's an inch. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. And then I'm going to connect those lines from top to bottom. Now, it is easier if the image that you're starting with is in black and white. So if you're able to print a picture out and then you can print it in black and white, I would do that. That's just kind of a trick because it helps you to see the different values of the colors, and since it's in like a grayscale, you can see how light and dark to shade things. If your picture isn't, mine's from a magazine and it was in black and white already, so that worked for me. But if yours is in color, that's just, you can still do that. It's a little more challenging to try and convert those colors to black and white as you're drawing. But it's a good challenge. It's a fun challenge. So don't be scared if you find a picture that's in full color. You can still try to recreate that. Now I'm going to switch this around and draw my grid the other way. So I'm going to again take my paper and I'm going to measure it. Now this is about 10.5 inches, and I kind of just want an even inch. I don't really want to deal with half inches, so I'm going to actually make this just 10 inches, and I think I don't really need this bottom area of the picture, so I'm going to move this up so that my 10 inches will cut off down below. So I'm going to again mark off every inch along my ruler, just draw a little line on the paper, and then my 10 inches is right at the end there. And then I'll do the same thing on this side. I am going to trim off those edges so that I can have just a 10 by 5 grid. So I've traced over my lines now so you can see them a little bit better, and so I can see them a little bit better. Now it's time to draw a grid on your actual paper. So here's my paper, and here's my image. Now, if your picture is on the smaller side, like I would say smaller than this, you would probably want to double it in size on your actual drawing paper. So what you would do, You would still make the 1-inch grid over it, but on your paper, instead, you would make a grid that is 2 inches by 2 inches. So instead of going across the edges and measuring off every inch, you would measure off every 2 inches. And then do the same on this side and connect it all so that you would have the same amount of squares, but they would just be bigger on here. So my image right here is 10 by 5. I'm going to be doing the same amount of squares on here, and I'm going to be making a 1-inch grid just because I think that this size drawing will fit well on my paper. Also, my paper is not double the size of this drawing, so it wouldn't work out too well for me. So it's up to you, whatever you decide for your image. When you are making your grid on the paper, you want to draw it very lightly. It's okay if your grid lines on your image are drawn with marker. You aren't going to use the image when you're done. You're just going to have your drawing. And you don't want to see those grid lines because it's kind of showing people that you kind of cheated in a way, even though it's not cheating, it's just a drawing technique. But you don't want people to know that you use these squares to draw everything. You just want it to look like a drawing with no lines in the background. So draw your lines, draw your grid very lightly so that you're able to erase it before you start shading. Alright, so now my whole paper is gridded. You might not be able to see too well, but it is gridded. Now, my paper was 12 inches by 9 inches, and if you remember, my picture here is 10 by 5. So if I wanted to, I could trim off the extra squares that I don't need just to make it 10 by 5 also. You also don't have to do that. You could trim it at the very end when you're all done. So like right now, I could mark off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And just kind of make this line a little bit darker and then mark off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across. And then draw a line up this way, just so I know that that's the edge of my drawing. And then I can use this extra space to test out my different shades of pencils or just different shading techniques before I draw it on my actual, put it on my actual drawing. I can practice here. Or you could figure out a different place. Maybe you want your artwork to have a border. Maybe I wanted my actual drawing to end up being in the middle of my page. I would have had to measure that out a little bit more, I guess. But if I wanted my actual drawing to be in the middle of the page, I could have measured it out so that I would have all this extra space around here and I would just be drawing in the middle. It's all up to you. But for my drawing, I'm just going to have it be here, and at the very end, I'm going to cut it all out. And now your next step is to start drawing. So what you're going to do is go square by square, and as best as you can, copy what you're seeing in each square. Try to just focus it one at a time. And I like to go in order. I like to start at the top corner and work my way over and down to the next row until I'm to the very end. This first step, you're really just sketching out where everything goes. You're not doing any shading. So if I start with this first square, it's just part of my background, so that's going to be shading. There's no outlines or shapes in that actual square, so I'm going to skip over to the next one. Same with the next one, same with the next one. Now this fourth square at the top, I do start to see some shapes. It might help you if you don't want to be looking at the whole picture at once. That might be a little overwhelming. If you want to just focus really on one square at a time and not be distracted by anything else that's going on in the picture, you can take other paper or something to cover up your other squares so that really you are just looking at one square at a time and transferring it to your paper. That might help. So I'm going to really look close at this square. I notice that this shape I see, it starts right at the corner of this square. So I'm going to make sure that I'm working on the fourth square on my paper. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to very lightly, I'm just sketching out the shapes I'm seeing. I'm going to draw this coming up, coming over. It comes about, if I look at this square, a little more than halfway down the square. So it's not exactly halfway in the middle, but comes up pretty close. And then there's another line that comes up that's her hairline, actually. And that is a little bit above the halfway mark on the square. So again, lightly just sketching out what I'm seeing. I have the basic outline drawn in that square, so I'm going to move to the next square. If you want, again, you can cover it up so you're just looking at one square at a time, but I'm just going to leave this open for now so I can see where it continues. So this continues, it comes over, and then towards the middle part of this square, this line starts to arch outwards. So, and go down. So I'm going to do that. And then same here, this line continues, and it starts to come down, and it doesn't exactly go halfway to the middle of this square, but it goes a little bit less than halfway. So there I have my first two squares drawn. I can move down to my next row and focus square by square again. Do that until you have the entire image transferred to your paper, just the outline. Once you have that, you're going to erase your grid lines on your drawing and then go ahead and start shading.